Welcome back. Today, we're digging into a fascinating modern political survival guide that played out in the Middle East. We're calling it Monarchy 2.0, the case of political pliability.
So let's start with a puzzle from back in 2011 during the Arab Spring. A huge wave of protests swept across the region, people demanding change. And you know what? It worked. Presidents who seemed like they'd be in power for life were suddenly toppled. But right in the middle of all that chaos, something pretty strange happened. The kings held on.
I mean, look at this. Republics in Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, Yemen, they all fell apart. Regimes that seemed permanent just fractured. But the hereditary monarchies, they proved to be incredibly resilient. They definitely bent, but they didn't break. So the big question is, how did they pull that off?
Okay, so here's how we're going to break down their survival strategy. We're going to look at their clever political maneuvering, how they kept a grip on power, the economic bargains they made, and how all that comes together in this new model we're calling Monarchy 2.0.
Now, their survival wasn't just about using brute force. Not at all. It was a really sophisticated strategy, a story of super fast adaptation that managed to absorb and redirect all that protest energy.
And right at the heart of this strategy is a concept we're calling political pliability. You can think of it like a playbook for 21st century monarchs. It's this top-down approach that creates the illusion of listening to the people, of being responsive, all while keeping the ultimate authority safe and sound back in the palace.
All right, let's look at the first pillar of this strategy, what we're calling the political shell game. This was all about managing public anger by creating the appearance of change without ever actually giving up any real control.
So check out this four-step maneuver. Step 1, protests erupt on the streets. Step 2, you immediately get out there and announce these huge, sweeping reforms. In places like Morocco and Jordan, this meant things like new cabinets, new constitutional talks. Then, and here's the really clever part, you delegate the risk. You push responsibility on to parliaments and prime ministers. This lets the monarch float above it all, looking like a wise, benevolent referee. And meanwhile, step 4, the real power is quietly being centralized right back in the palace.
And here's the thing. This tactic, it isn't new at all. It actually has really deep historical roots in the region. You see it with the Ottoman Empire's reforms back in the 19th century, using new structures to centralize power. The French did it when they created Grand Lebanon. You even see it in Iran's constitution after the revolution. The playbook is old, but boy, the way they used it in 2011 was absolutely masterful.
But look, all that political theater is pretty meaningless if you can't actually back it up. So let's dive into the second pillar, control of the real, unseen levers of power that guarantee everything stays stable.
The absolute bedrock of monarchical stability is the unwavering loyalty of the security establishment. The monarchs were careful to maintain a unified military command, reinforced by powerful elite families. This was crucial for preventing the kind of internal splits that turned out to be fatal for so many other leaders.
And this quote, it just perfectly illustrates what happens when that unity completely fails. Remember when Egypt and Syria tried to form the United Arab Republic? It collapsed in just 3 years. And a big reason why? A Syrian general later complained that the Egyptian officers all acted with this incredible arrogance that just alienated their Syrian partners. That kind of internal military division, it was a key factor in why the whole thing fell apart.
So the monarchs in 2011 succeeded precisely because they prevented these kinds of fractures. By keeping the security services unified, loyal, and on a very short leash, they made sure the state's power to enforce its will remained firmly in their hands.
Okay, let's move on to the third and final pillar of this survival strategy. It's about using economic tools not just for things like development, but to actively buy the consent and loyalty of the population.
For decades, there was sort of an unwritten social contract in the region. The state provides jobs and welfare, and in return, you stay out of politics. But, as the scholar Asaf Bayat has shown, many states began to back away from this deal, and that created a really dangerous political vacuum.
And as Roger Owen highlights, this is exactly where the modern rulers, especially the monarchs, stepped in. Whether they had a ton of oil wealth or they were getting foreign aid, they used those resources to create a whole new bargain. One that's based on performance and very targeted spending.
So what does this performance bargain actually look like on the ground? Well, when the protests flared up in 2011, the money was deployed incredibly quickly and strategically. Public sector salaries got a boost,
Direct cash aid was handed out, and key groups were given new business opportunities or subsidies on things like fuel and food. The message was crystal clear. Loyalty will be rewarded, and we can make this dissent go away with cash.
So let's put all three of those pillars together. You've got the political shell game, the tight control of security, and the economic performance bargain. What does the final picture of this Monarchy 2.0 system look like?
Well, what you get is this really clever system. On the surface, it looks like you've got democratic procedures, parliaments, elections, constitutional reforms. But in reality, the true power is still centralized in the palace. Key decisions are completely untouchable, and legitimacy is based on performance, handouts and subsidies, not real participation.
So the whole system really separates the political process from the political outcome. Citizens are given a voice, a role to play, but the monarchs always retain a veto, making sure their ultimate power is never, ever actually threatened.
And this really shows the fundamental vulnerability of this whole Monarchy 2.0 model, doesn't it? It's completely built on the ability to perform, on the ability to pay up. So what happens when oil prices crash, or when foreign aid dries up? And what about a whole new generation, a generation that's connected to the world and might start demanding genuine participation, not just the performance of it? It leaves us with a final, really provocative question. Just how sustainable is this very clever, but maybe, just maybe, very fragile model of power?